I think it's important to know why you're spending time with God because, you know, you need a why to pretty much everything you do. If you don't have that reasoning as to why you're doing something, chances are you're most likely not going to stick with it because, you know, you know, you don't have that reason. So when things, don't look so good, like, you'll just turn around and back away from it like that, and it's the same thing with God. You gotta have your why as to why you're spending time with Him, why you want to get close to Him. Because if you don't have that reasoning, when things flip over, you're gonna want to walk away and not continue this walk. And that's what I really want to come on here and talk about, just the importance of knowing your why. Yes, to get closer to Christ, we have to spend time with God, but it's important to also want to spend time with God, because I know that some people, they can treat God like a checklist or a to-do list, and they see their time with Him as, out of, they view it as doing it out of necessity. So therefore, it makes the experience like non-entertaining. Like to them, it's just boring. But if if you actually want to spend time with God, then you'll find joy in His presence, and you'll actually like want to get closer to Him, because you feel that He wants to get closer to you as well. James 4:8 says, "Draw near to God, and He'll draw near to you." If you make that first step, God is going to answer. Because if He sees that you're willing to get closer to Him, then He's going to reveal Himself to you, and He's going to get closer to you. So, and if you notice yourself viewing your time spent with God out of necessity and not out of want, then all you gotta do is, come to God with a sincere heart and pray to Him. And I would suggest reciting Psalms 51 verse 10, which says, "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew the right spirit within me." Right there, you're literally confirming to God that how you've been going about things probably isn't the best. And if God sees that, you have a sincere heart while praying that, He will be willing to work with you. God is not out here looking for perfect people. He's looking for willing people. And if He sees that you're willing to get closer to Him, and like if you acknowledge that you messed up and your ways are not better, He's willing to work with that. He can work with that, as opposed to someone who doesn't confess to Him and just stays silent. If you bring it to God with a pure heart, it doesn't matter how bad you think you are, He will be willing to work with you. And in my opinion, Ezekiel 36:26 is God giving you that answer to your prayer. It says, "I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will take the heart of stone out of your flesh and give you a heart of flesh." Right there is literally God confirming that He will answer your prayers if He sees you trying to get closer to Him. Like God, like He's not going to see you making these efforts and then decide to, leave, like hang you out to dry. Like He's not going to do that. If He sees that you're willing to put in the work, and He sees your effort, He's going to respond, and He's going to start His work in you. Obviously, it's going to take time. It's not like there's no overnight thing, but gradually you'll see yourself looking more like Him, and that's all God wants. If He sees you making that effort, He will respond. And in order to, stop treating God like a checklist, you have to want to, be in His presence. You gotta find joy in talking with Him and reading the Word, prayer. Just just being content and happy in all circumstances, because He's with you. Psalms 37:4 says it best. It says, "Delight yourself also in the Lord, and He shall give you the desires of your heart." See, when people, when they spend their time with God out of necessity, they're not delighting themselves in Him. So therefore, what they desire out of the Lord, they're not going to get, because they're not doing it out of a pure heart. But when you delight yourself in the Lord and you actually enjoy His presence, enjoy His company, enjoy reading the Word, enjoy talking to Him, having prayers and conversation with Him, then that's when you start to see, you start to receive the things that you wanted, because you know what you're receiving isn't why you're coming to God. You're coming to God for God Himself. You're just enjoying Him. And that's all God wants. He just wants you to delight yourself in Him, because it doesn't matter if you receive all of these good things or not. as long as you enjoy the Lord's presence, you're good. And that's how that's how you stop, treating God as a checklist. You gotta actually enjoy his presence. And and that takes work. You don't just go from spending time with God out of necessity to spending time with God out of want. That change just doesn't happen overnight. It takes some work with it. And you got to change that mindset, day by day. It's a process. And I think Romans 12 says it best. It says, and do not conform to the patterns of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. See, this means like you literally got to change your whole perspective about things. You gotta you got to change it from a positive, you got to change it from a negative into a positive point of view. You got to realize the way you've been thinking, the way you've been going about things again is wrong. And, you're willing to change your mind because you want to have a godly perspective and a positive perspective about things. And you want to stop seeing God out of necessity and start looking for him out of want. And, that's the thing. And take me for example, like I've had, I'm still working on that, renewing my mind. There's a project that I'm working on for my church. And at first when I started it, I was looking at it out of necessity, and I was looking at it like, I gotta do this. To be honest, I was kind of looking at it as a burden. But lately, what I've been doing, I've been changing my perspective about things. Instead of looking at it as a burden, I now see it as, okay, how can I put my creative touch on this thing and bring God glory by me doing this? See, it's all about how you view things and the renewing of your mind. If you renew your mind, you'll start to see things in a different light, and you'll stop seeing God as a checklist, and you'll start seeing him as a loving father who wants to deal with you. And because he has your best interest at heart. So and that's how I'm going about it. Realizing that to stop looking at things out of a negative manner, start seeing it in a godly manner, seeing that how to flip, like how to turn things around. And how you used to view things, now you change your perspective, and now you can see God in it because you're actually wanting to see God in it. And that's what I wanted really to come on here and talk about. Just people view God, they spend time with him out of necessity and because they feel like they have to. But the key to actually experiencing God's joy is to want to be in his presence and to enjoy, your time with him and view him as a loving father who wants to love you and be there for you. And yeah, that's all I got for today. I'll talk to y'all when I talk to y'all. Peace. God bless.